I never thought I'd own my parents' dream house, especially not at 18, but life has a way of creating the most unexpected twists, doesn't it? I'm Alex Chen, and this is how I went from being kicked out on my 18th birthday to becoming the owner of a $2.8 million property that my parents desperately wanted. But let me start from the beginning, because this story isn't just about a house, it's about family, betrayal, and the sweeter side of karma. Growing up, I was always different from what my parents expected. While my younger sister Jennifer was the perfect child, captain of the cheerleading squad, straight A student, and social butterfly, I was the quiet one who spent hours in front of computers. My parents never understood my passion for coding and cryptocurrency. "Stop wasting time on that internet nonsense," my father would say, while my mother added, "Why can't you be more like your sister?" What they didn't know was that while they were pushing me to follow their traditional path, I was building something of my own. At 15, I started developing apps. Small ones at first, utility apps that helped people organize their daily lives. By 16, I had a steady income from app sales, but I kept it quiet. I knew my parents would either try to control it or dismiss it as pocket money. Then came cryptocurrency. While other kids were spending their allowances on movies and clothes, I was investing in Bitcoin and Ethereum. I studied the market obsessively, learning about blockchain technology and smart contracts. My initial investment of $2,000, saved from app sales and birthday money, grew exponentially during the crypto boom. But my parents saw none of this. To them, I was just their disappointing eldest child who wasted time on computers. They focused all their attention on Jennifer, who was 2 years younger but already planning her pre-med track at their alma mater. "Alex, you need to think about your future," my mother would lecture during dinner. "Jennifer's already got 3 college acceptance letters, and you haven't even applied anywhere." What they didn't know was that I had already secured my future. By 17, my crypto investments had multiplied several times over, and my apps were generating steady monthly income. I had opened a business account under my name with the help of my Aunt Sarah, the only family member who believed in me. Then came my 18th birthday. I expected it to be like any other day, a quiet celebration, maybe some cake, and the usual comparisons to Jennifer. Instead, it became the day everything changed. I came down to breakfast, and instead of birthday wishes, I found my parents sitting at the dining table with stern expressions. My sister wasn't there, probably still asleep, as usual. "Sit down, Alex," my father said, his voice cold. "We need to talk about your future." I sat, already knowing this wouldn't be a pleasant conversation. "You're 18 now," my mother began, her hands clasped tightly on the table, "and it's time you learned about responsibility." My father nodded. "We've decided that since you refuse to take your future seriously, you need to experience the real world. You're old enough to leave." I stared at them, not quite processing what they were saying. "What do you mean?" "We mean," my father continued, his voice rising, "that you're an adult now. We've supported your computer games long enough. It's time for you to move out and learn how life really works." "But what about college?" I asked, more out of curiosity than concern. My mother's lips tightened. "We've decided to focus our college fund on Jennifer. She has real potential, and with medical school costs." Of course, they were cutting me off to fund Jennifer's education. I should have seen it coming. "You're old enough to leave," my father finally shouted, his patience wearing thin at my lack of reaction. "Pack your things, you have until the end of the week." I didn't argue, I didn't cry, I simply nodded and went back to my room. They probably expected me to beg or promise to change, but I had something they didn't know about: financial independence. That evening, I called Aunt Sarah. She had an apartment in the city she used as a rental property, but it was currently vacant. "Stay there as long as you need," she offered. "And Alex, don't let them break you." Moving out was surprisingly easy when you'd been preparing for it subconsciously for years. I had already digitized all my important documents, and my assets were secure in accounts my parents knew nothing about. Within 3 days, I was settled into Aunt Sarah's apartment. My parents seemed almost disappointed by how smoothly I accepted their decision. They probably expected me to struggle, to come crawling back begging for help. Instead, I focused on expanding my business. The crypto market was booming, and my apps were gaining more users every day. I hired a small team to help with development and started taking on bigger projects. My parents, meanwhile, didn't check on me once during those first 3 months. Jennifer, surprisingly, was the only one who reached out. They're being totally unfair. She texted me occasionally, but you know how they are with their tough love philosophy. Then came the day that changed everything. I was having lunch with Aunt Sarah when my phone buzzed with multiple notifications, all from Jennifer. OMG Alex, Mom and Dad are buying their dream house. You know that gorgeous Victorian on Maple Street? They're getting it. They're so excited. They're telling everyone. I smiled, knowing exactly which house she meant. The Victorian mansion on Maple Street had been my parents' dream home for years. They'd often drive by it, pointing out its features and saying, "One day, that'll be ours." What they didn't know was that it already belonged to someone else, me. You see, during those 3 months of silence, I hadn't been idle. My crypto investments had paid off enormously, and when I heard through Aunt Sarah that the Victorian was going on the market, I moved quickly, using an LLC to keep my name private. I purchased the property before it was even officially listed. The next day, I received an invitation to a family dinner, not from my parents, but from Jennifer. "They want to share some big news," she said. "Please come?" I agreed, more curious than anxious. When I arrived at our old house, my parents barely acknowledged me, but Jennifer hugged me tight. "I've missed you," she whispered. During dinner, my parents could barely contain their excitement. They waited until dessert to make their announcement. "We have wonderful news," my mother began, practically glowing. "We're moving. We've finally bought our dream home, the Victorian on Maple Street." My father added proudly, "We're in the final stages of paperwork. Soon, we'll be living in the finest house in town." I listened as they detailed their plans for renovation, how they'd decorate each room, how they'd host parties in the grand ballroom. Jennifer caught my eye, noticing my slight smile. Finally, my mother turned to me, her first direct acknowledgement all evening. "Of course, you're welcome to visit occasionally, once we're settled." That's when I decided to drop my bombshell. "Actually," I said, pulling out my phone, "you might want to check who owns the property before making any plans." My father frowned. "What are you talking about? We've already arranged everything with the real estate agent." "Just check," I insisted, sliding my phone across the table with the property records displayed. My mother grabbed the phone, and I watched as her face went from confusion to shock. My father leaned over to look, and his face turned white. There it was, in black and white. The property was owned by my LLC, and as they scrolled through the documentation, they found my name as the sole owner. This can't be right," my father stuttered. "Oh, it's right," I assured them. "I bought it 3 weeks ago, cash offer, no mortgage needed." The silence that followed was deafening. Jennifer looked between us, trying to process what was happening. My mother's hands trembled as she set down my phone. "But, how?" she finally managed to ask. "Remember all that internet nonsense I was wasting my time on?" I said calmly. "Turns out it was quite profitable. Those apps I developed? They're generating 6-figure monthly revenue. And my crypto investments? Well, let's just say I could buy that house several times over." My father's face turned red. "You're lying. There's no way you could afford." I pulled up my business accounts on my phone, showing them the numbers. "I'm not the failure you thought I was. I just succeeded in a way you couldn't understand." My mother started to cry, whether from shame or frustration, I couldn't tell. My father looked like he'd seen a ghost. "So what now?" Jennifer asked, breaking the tension. "Are you going to live there?" I shook my head. "No, I'm quite happy in my apartment, but I am looking for tenants." I looked directly at my parents. "I hear the current applicants have a history of poor judgment and mistreating their children. I'm not sure they'd qualify." My father stood up abruptly. "Now listen here." "No, you listen." I cut him off firmly. 3 months ago, you threw me out because you thought I was a disappointment. You didn't bother to ask about my life, my work, or my achievements. You were so focused on your narrow version of success that you couldn't see I'd already achieved it." My mother wiped her eyes. "We only wanted what was best for you." "No," I corrected her. "You wanted what was easiest for you to understand. And now, ironically, you need my approval to live in your dream home." The reality of the situation finally seemed to hit them. Their 18-year-old disappointment of a child now held the keys, literally and figuratively, to their dreams. "What do you want?" my father asked, his voice hollow. "I want you to understand that success doesn't always look the way you expect it to. I want you to acknowledge that your tough love was really just a lack of faith in me, and I want you to apologize, not just to me, but to every kid who's ever been dismissed because their dreams didn't fit their parents' expectations." Jennifer reached over and squeezed my hand under the table. My parents sat in stunned silence. "The house is available for rent," I continued, "at market rate, with a proper lease agreement. But first, we're going to have a long conversation about respect, support, and family." What followed was 3 hours of difficult but necessary discussion. My parents, faced with the undeniable evidence of my success, finally began to listen. They asked about my business, my investments, my plans for the future. For the first time, they saw me as an adult with valuable insights, not just their disappointing child. The weeks that followed were interesting, to say the least. My parents had to swallow their pride and apply to rent the house from me, their 18-year-old son. I insisted on proper background checks and financial verification, just like any other landlord would. They had to provide references and sign a standard lease agreement. The irony wasn't lost on anyone when they had to list their previous address and landlord experience. My father, a man who had always prided himself on being a homeowner, now had to request his own son as a reference. Jennifer found the whole situation hilarious. "It's like a reality TV show," she joked. My brother the landlord. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. There were moments of tension, especially when my parents realized they'd have to run any renovation plans by me first. My mother struggled with the idea that she couldn't just knock down walls or replace fixtures without my approval. "But we know what's best for the house," she argued during one particularly heated discussion. "Just like you knew what was best for me?" I responded quietly. That shut down that conversation pretty quickly. Aunt Sarah, my longtime supporter, couldn't help but enjoy the situation. "Sometimes the best lessons come in unexpected packages," she told my parents when they complained to her. "Maybe it's time to learn from the child you underestimated." The most significant change came in my parents' attitude toward alternative careers and investments. My father, who had once dismissed cryptocurrency as fake money, now asked for my advice on investment strategies. My mother, who had looked down on tech careers, started sharing articles about successful app developers with her friends. But the real transformation was in our family dynamic. The power shift forced my parents to see me as an equal, not just their child. Our conversations became more balanced, more respectful. They started asking about my opinions on matters beyond just the house. Jennifer benefited too. Our parents' rigid expectations of her began to relax. "Maybe I don't have to go to medical school," she confided in me one day. "I've always wanted to study marine biology instead." The house, which had been a symbol of my parents' dreams, became a symbol of our family's transformation. Every rental payment was a reminder of how wrong they had been about me, but also an opportunity for growth and understanding. 1 year later, I sat in what used to be my parents' dream house, now my investment property, reviewing their lease renewal application. They had been good tenants, I had to admit. Every payment was on time, they maintained the property well, and they'd learned to consult me before making any changes. My father caught me smiling as I signed the renewal. "What's so amusing?" he asked. "Just thinking about how different things were a year ago," I replied. "Remember when you thought I'd never amount to anything?" He had the grace to look embarrassed. "We were wrong," he admitted, "very wrong, and I'm sorry it took something like this to make us see it." My mother, who was arranging flowers nearby, added, "We're proud of you, Alex, not just because of your success, but because of how you handled everything. You taught us more than we ever taught you." I looked around the beautiful Victorian that had brought this change about, the house that my parents had dreamed of owning, that they now rented from their 18-year-old son. Sometimes life's greatest lessons come packaged in the most unexpected ways. "So," I said, sliding the signed renewal across the table, "same time next year?" My father picked up the lease, smiling ruefully. "Same time next year, landlord." As I left the house that evening, I couldn't help but think about how life had come full circle. The child they had kicked out for not meeting their expectations had become someone they now looked up to. The house they had dreamed of owning had become the catalyst for rebuilding our relationship. Sometimes, success isn't just about proving others wrong, it's about showing them a different way to be right. And sometimes, the best revenge isn't revenge at all, it's growth, understanding, and the kind of success that changes not just your life, but the lives of those who doubted you. As for me, I'm still developing apps, still investing in crypto, and still proving that success doesn't always follow the traditional path. But now, I do it with my family's support and understanding, not in spite of their disapproval. And that Victorian on Maple Street? It's not just a house anymore, it's a reminder that dreams come true in unexpected ways, and that sometimes, the best way to help others grow is to show them exactly what they failed to see in you. The end of this story isn't really an end at all, it's a beginning, of better understanding, of stronger relationships, and of a family that learned that success comes in many forms, and sometimes, it comes with a lease agreement and a valuable lesson about judging others too quickly.